behalf of the Port Harcourt chapter. So first of all, I would like to welcome, he joined us quite on time, the president himself of the NAPI globally. Please, with the emojis, can you just welcome our president, Mr. John Bosco Uche? You're most welcome to the meeting today. Would like to recognize also Mr. Ehi Bazwaye right here, fellow NAPI as well. You're welcome to the meeting. We recognize all the other ESCOs and of course, certainly our president-elect, Mrs. Olajumoke Ajayi, fellow NAPI. You are most welcome to this technical meeting. We are so pleased to have all of you among us here today. And every other member of the ESCO, we also welcome you to this meeting. I will make a special introduction later on for our chairman of the day, and he will be introduced appropriately. So thank you very much, all of you here present, and as well the ESCOs of the Port Harcourt chapter. You are most welcome to this meeting in the month of April. Your support is immense. So just a few house rules for all of us in this meeting that will help this meeting to be very fruitful. Let's stay muted at all times. Whenever we are not speaking, it helps us to have some quietness in the room. Then also, please kindly, as best as you can, when the network is good, kindly turn on your camera when you are speaking. That allows people to also see you and know who you are. Then at all times in the course of the meeting, let us use the reaction buttons we have on Zoom. You can clap your hands, you can give a thumbs up, a heart, or you can smile or laugh at something you find interesting. It helps the meeting to be very fruitful. So right now, I would like to invite one of our dearest in the Port Harcourt chapter to open this meeting with a prayer. Please, I'd like you to welcome with a clap Mr. Emo Dayetuaye, who will take the opening prayer for us this morning. Over to you, Pastor Emo.
Good morning, all. The president, the vice president, the president-elect, and Shego Bilaja, and every one of us here present. It's my honor to take the opening prayer. Father, we want to thank you this morning for the privilege. We thank you for what you have made NAPI to become in the history of this nation, in the industry. We thank you for minds that come together at the beginning and the evolution thus far. Lord, we ask that in today's meeting, you take absolute control in the name of Jesus. Let the presentation be to the benefit of all, to the glory of your name. At the end of it all, we shall return all the glory to you. Thank you, Father, because you know you have answered. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Thank you very much, Pastor Emo, for the prayers. So I would like to now invite our publicity secretary, Mr. Obobi Onwuka, who will be giving us a safety moment. Over to you, Obobi. And if you could turn on your camera, that would be great as well.
Mr. Mamadou, confirm you can hear me. Okay.
Yes, loud and clear.
Try to work my camera as well. So good morning, everybody. And I'd like to welcome us once again to this month's technical business meeting. And I think it's really my pleasure to share a few health and safety reminders, which we're all aware of, that we would abide by during the course of this meeting. So please, I'd like to start by saying, do not join this call or join this meeting while driving. I cannot overemphasize this. Even if you are with a headset or the hands-free, please do not join this meeting as long as you're driving. Our advocacy remains park somewhere and listening, or dial out. This session will be recorded and a link will be shared after this meeting. Always be aware of your surroundings, of your environment, whether you're at home or in the office. Please, if you're using a headset, ensure you are still able to hear the fire alarm. At least you should know what the fire alarm sounds like. Know where the fire extinguishers are. know the emergency exit points and the muster points, very important, especially if you are in the office. If possible, since this is a virtual meeting, if possible, keep yourself hydrated by making a glass of water available throughout the course of this meeting. Stand up and move around in your space for a few minutes while you listen to the presentation. That said, let's have a healthy and a safe meeting going forward. And I'll send it back to you, Mr. Momodu.
Thank you, Mr. Onwuka, for very precise and important information on the safety moment. All right, so the next thing on our agenda is to take some remarks from the chapter coordinator, who today is unavoidably absent, but he is in full force behind us, supporting us even for today's meeting, and he has prepared this meeting with us. So Dr. Magnus Kanu will not be able to join us today, like I said, for unavoidable reasons, but he sends his regards to every one of us. First of all, he congratulates the chapter yet again for another session planned as this. And he's very grateful to all the sponsors. We are grateful to all our sponsors who continually support us in the Port Harcourt chapter. And here we are also making a request and an appeal to have more and more sponsors in this Port Harcourt chapter, a very vibrant and dynamic chapter. So he sends his warm regards to us, and he knows and believes we will have a wonderful session, which we already begun today. So as you know, Port Harcourt chapter is very dynamic, and we encourage presentations, we encourage participation, we encourage visits as well. We support the schools and we support the students. So always make yourself available to be a part of the Port Harcourt chapter. And we really crave your support in terms of sponsorship for all our business meetings in the months and in the years to come. So these are the quick remarks on behalf of the chapter coordinator, Dr. Magnus Kanu. So at this time, I will gladly invite to speak to us none other than the president of NAPE himself, is a fellow. Please welcome Mr. John Bosco Uche as he gives us his remarks and opening address. Mr. John Bosco.
All right, thank you very much, Momodu. And again, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Again, recognizing all those you already mentioned, without going to then the other executive committee members on the call, the vice president, the president-elect, and I believe maybe a few other ESCO members. I really want to say, commend Port Harcourt chapter for what you continue to do. I think you mentioned it already, quite dynamic. And we all do know that Port Harcourt remains the hub of the oil and gas activities in this country. And I'm quite excited that I'm able to also join again today, being the virtual one. The first one you had at the beginning of the year, which was physical, I was there with you. And all I can assure you is that every good thing you continue to do, the executive committee members will continue to support you. And that's why you could see how we showed up today already. We remain the knowledge base of the industry. And I'm quite excited that today, the topic that is going to be covered will actually be doing exactly what we are best known to be doing. So I'm going to be urging every single one to please relax, participate actively, ask the right questions. I know the speaker very well. He was going to, any question you can ask, I can trust that he'll be able to handle it very well. I also know the chairman very well, Shego Bilaja. I'm sure he's also going to moderate very well. So all I can ask you is to relax and make sure that you get the best, because you cannot get this kind of learning and experience elsewhere, if not in NAPE platform. So on that note, I want to yield the floor back to you. And thanks, Momodu, for everything, yourself, the chapter coordinator, and the other executive committee members of the chapter are doing. We're proud of what you're doing, and be rest assured, we'll continue to give you your support that you need. Back to you now.
All right, thank you so much, President, for those very kind words. We really appreciate them very much. And I'm sure my boss himself, Dr. Magnus, will get your feedbacks directly. All right, we know we have the president-elect among us. We'll give her a special moment later on in the course of the meeting. She will speak to us and also have the honor to present the plaque today to the speaker. So right now, we will introduce the chairman for today's technical business meeting, and he is none other than a seasoned professional. When I got the bio, I had to go through it, and I was impressed. He is Mr. Olusegun Obilaja. He is a graduate of University of Nigeria, Nsukka, with a BSc in geology, an MSc in petroleum geology and sedimentology from the great University of Ibadan. He is an experienced geoscientist with over 29 years of experience in the oil industry. He joined the exploration team of Shell Nigeria and Warri in 1996, and he has worked in different teams in Warri, Port Harcourt, Lagos, and Oman. Until recently, he was the head of the Specialist Geosciences and Exploration Discipline Lead for Shell in Nigeria, responsible for leading a team of specialist geoscientists focused on de-risking subsurface opportunities, reducing uncertainties, and helping in delivering safe, high-pressure, high-temperature wells. He is a proven hydrocarbon finder with successes in the onshore, shallow water, and deep water offshore Niger Delta, as well as in the South Oman Salt Basin of Oman. Finally, he is also currently the Shallow Water Offshore Exploration Business Opportunity Manager and Exploration Technical Authority 1, TA1 for Renaissance Energy. I'd like you to all together welcome Mr. Olusegun Obilaja. So, sir, I will yield the floor to you for you to introduce the speaker for today and tell us what we have ahead. Over to you, Mr. Segun Obilaja.
Thank you very much, Mamodu. Quite an impressive day so far. And thanks for welcoming me again to this our dear association meeting. And welcome everyone to our session today. Incidentally, though I do not have physically the intro for our speaker for today, but I know him very well, so I can.
I have his bio for you, sir, so I can show it to you when you're ready.
Oh, please do show. But Dr. Obinna is somebody I know very well. We have worked together in Shell for some years. A very smart, cerebral young man and highly energetic. Okay, there you are. So he has a BTech applied technology in geology from the Abubakar Tafawa Balewa University in Bauchi. He has an MSc in petroleum geochemistry from the Newcastle University in the UK, and has a PhD in petroleum geoscience from the Heriot Watt University, Scotland University, United Kingdom. In terms of experience, he's been a log analyst, Real Well Services in Aberdeen. That's when he started his professional career. Then he joined Shell as an asset petrophysicist, then became our QI petrophysicist, also in Shell. So ever since then, I've been working with him since when he was a petrophysicist. Then along the line, he actually crossed fully into the folk of the exploration geoscientist. I was there also when he crossed. I was the discipline lead as a very young, energetic, smart geophysicist coming into our exploration geoscience folk. And then he became our QI geophysics specialist in Shell, working across exploration and development, irrespective. As long as we have a risk, he was there for us to de-risk. Major achievement, he has drilled over 10 wells with all outcomes matching QI predictions. In other words, he has been very successful in predicting, and we see what he has predicted. For fun, he loves kayaking, hiking, music, and movies. Please join me in welcoming our Dr. Chudi Obinna. Chudi, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Thanks. Okay. So, Momodu, I can share my screen now, right?
Okay, yes, you can.
All right. Let's confirm when you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Like introduced by Segun Obilaja, My name is Obinna Chudi. I'm a QI Geophysics specialist, and I want to thank NAPE, the executive from the president, the incoming president as well, and the chapter head as well, for giving me the opportunity to make this presentation today. I believe that the topic being presented will be an opportunity for us to learn one or two things. And of course, at the long run, I believe it will also form a platform for us to discuss and know what is happening elsewhere in terms of this predictive capability for AVO. So the topic, as you can see, a novel technique for predicting false positive AVOs. And here we're going to be integrating rock physics and seismic inversion based approach applied in the Niger Delta. Just to let us know that the materials being presented today are all extracts from publications which I made both in the SPE and the NAPE conference 2023 and 2024 respectively. So if you go to One Petrol using that SPE number, you'll be able to extract this article there. So it's been published. And also there is another article that supports this work as well, largely centered on the geology aspect of the work. So what I'm going to be presenting today is more skewed towards geophysics, QI quantitative interpretation. But to get more details in geology, you can also fish out that SPE paper, largely centered around the geology aspect of the study. So without just going straight ahead, so in the course of my presentation, I'll walk us through some basic QI techniques just to set the right foundation. I'm also mindful that we also have students in our midst, so I won't be too I wouldn't be too sophisticated with my presentation. So just to keep it simple for everyone tuned in to understand. So I'll stay on the basic techniques of fluid prediction and walk us through some of the underlying objective of why we took on this study, centered around a particular area, a study area. We'll look at the outcome of the opportunity, which of course was a failed one at the time. And what we did, post-mortem analysis that was carried out to understand why we failed and how we can overcome this challenge moving forward. So that you're going to see in the results. And I'm going to cap it up with a recommendation and of course, potential business impact of the study. So in terms of core techniques, we know when it comes to seismic interpretation, one of the foundations of seismic interpretation is understanding acoustic impedance, right? Our seismic data, the measurements is mostly velocity and density, of course, which we integrate to get acoustic impedance. And we know that as we transit from a shale interval into our hydrocarbon bearing interval, the acoustic impedance changes, and hence we watch out for acoustic impedance contrasts. Okay, and that's the reflection that you see when you do an amplitude extraction, is a measure of the acoustic impedance contrast between the bounding shale and your hydrocarbon bearing sands. And of course, as you transit from the hydrocarbon bearing sands to a brine sand, the acoustic impedance also changes depending, of course, on the density of the hydrocarbon bearing sands and the density of the brine sands as well. And depending on the polarity of your data, where you are, either an American polarity or called SEG, or European polarity or called anti-SEG, that interface between your hard shales and your very soft sand could be reflected as a soft kick here, which is a peak. And of course, when you go from a soft sand to a hard sand, brine-bearing sand is going to show up as a trough. Okay, so generally, this is what we expect to see under normal conditions. But of course, we know that acoustic properties changes with depth. So as you go down with depth, that whole analysis will change, will flip at some point where your shields are softer than your sands, and of course your hydrocarbon sands will be slightly softer than the brine sands. And of course, that is largely a function of depth and of course the reservoir quality as the cake get compacted due to mechanical compaction and of course diagenetic alteration. So based on this simple concept, when we interpret our seismic data, we look out for some key what we call DHIs, bright spots, okay, where you see a strong amplitude anomaly at the crest of the structure. Of course, the bright spot itself is not sufficient. It has to conform to structure. So it has to align itself with around a particular depth grid. So that is what the key thing we look out for, conformance to structure or fit to structure, as the case may be. In other situations, we can also observe what we call flat spots. So it's when you move from the crest of the structure as you go towards the flank, you observe that, of course, the acoustic impedance changes at that interface where it changes from hydrocarbon to brine. You will now see a very hard kick, prominent hard kick there, representing a hydrocarbon water contact, which could be a gas water contact, gas oil contact, or oil water contact. Okay, that's one other DHI. Another thing we typically sometimes do is understanding how your amplitude varies as you go from one fluid phase to another fluid phase. So in this case, you're trying to understand if you've got what kind of hydrocarbon you've got in the system. And the reason this is really good and how it helps us to understand A, our fluid type, and B, our contact prediction is largely dependent on the fact that as you go from gas to oil, the density of the fluid changes. So gas has a lower density compared to oil and of course compared to water, and that of course will affect the amplitude. So remember, amplitude is a measure of acoustic impedance, and acoustic impedance is density times velocity. So you expect that the acoustic impedance of your gas sands should vary as you move into oil sand and of course as you move into water, such that if you plot an amplitude versus depth, your amplitude for gas should be different from that of the oil and that of water. It is somewhat akin to pressure plots, okay? And it's the same thing. Pressures also gives us an indication of density variation across different fluid phases. So you're seeing, in this case, amplitude gradients changing from one fluid phase to the other, and that will help us define a potential contact. So that's a model, that's a real data where we have used this technology to understand fluid type and contacts. The other thing is rock physics analysis. Really, this, in a way, rock physics forms the foundation of our interpretation when it comes to understanding quantitatively our seismic signatures, particularly when we want to convert seismic attributes to rock properties, right? And you want to plot some elastic properties, seismic elastic properties that can help you infer either porosity or net to gross, or maybe sand quality, sand development, right? For instance, this cross plot here is a cross plot of VPVS against density. Against acoustic impedance. So VPVS on the y-axis and acoustic impedance or P impedance on the x-axis, and colored with resistivity. So the higher the resistivity, the brighter the color. You can see where your hydrocarbon sands are largely located. So it just tells us that from this cross plot, VPVS, a low VPVS ratio will indicate hydrocarbon bearing sands, and a low P impedance also will also indicate hydrocarbon bearing sands. With this information, you can move on to the next phase if you want to build an inversion model And that inversion model is largely dependent on what information you've extracted from your rock physics. So for this particular case, I have seen that, oh yes, my hydrocarbon-bearing sands tune in more with a low VPVS ratio. I can go ahead to build an inversion model for VPVS or an inversion model of P impedance, because I know either of these elastic properties can help me discriminate hydrocarbon-bearing sands from non-hydrocarbon-bearing sands. And from this model, a section view of a model, you can see that hydrocarbon-bearing sands stand out nicely. And as you go from the crest of that structure to the flank, you see there's a change in the acoustic contrast, depicting potential contacts there, and of course your brine leg at that point. So that is one other area we can also focus on. Another thing, again, that also forms the foundation of our interpretation is kind of fluid substitution forward models. I call it what-if models. So particularly in an exploration setting where you don't have well data, or you have few well penetrations, or you have a complexly faulted structure, lots of fault blocks, and all your wells are concentrated on one block, and you want to know what's happening on the other block. So you build forward models, log-based forward model or 2D forward models that can help you understand what your seismic signature actually represents, right? So from that forward model, it gives you an insight. Okay, if I've got brine in the system, what is the AVO character of that brine? I'll come to AVO shortly. If I've got oil of, say, 85% saturation, what is the seismic signature? What's the AVO behavior? If I've got 90% or 95%, what's the AVO behavior? If I've got gas in the system, what's the AVO behavior? This is at log basis now. And you use that information to understand your seismic data, okay? So it gives you understanding what kind of AVO behavior you're looking at. So coming down to AVO, which is amplitude varying with offsets, or amplitude varying with angle, depending on how you choose to give that terminology. And I mean, up until now, all we've been looking at is attributes that are largely due to acoustic impedance contrast. But when you step into the AVO space, here you're looking at how your amplitude varies with offsets or varies with angle as you go from your near to your mid and far offsets or far stack volume. And that is largely a function of contrast or variation in VPVS ratio or its equivalent Poisson ratio. And understanding that also gives us some level of indication of hydrocarbon field. And of course, that is also largely a function of course, acoustic impedance contrast, but most importantly, VPVS ratio. But we have different classes of AVO, and most times we associate this class of AVO or classes to either hydrocarbon-prone sands, good quality, very unconsolidated, high porosity sands, to a great extent, stiff sands in a way. And of course, the AVO class kind of varies with depth as well. So for shallow, younger sediments where porosities are, say, 30% and above, you're likely going to see a class 3 AVO response where amplitude increases with offsets, okay? You start off with very high amplitude, but it systematically increases as you go with offsets. And you also have a class 2 AVO response where the contrast between your shales and your bounding shale and your hydrocarbon sands is quite, it's not as descriptive as it should be. You have that class 2 AVO response that is near transparent, but it starts off with a weak AVO response and it increases with offset. Then you now go to class 1 sands, which are much deeper. And here you're looking at hard sands that are capped with slightly, softer shales. Okay, and here you have a class 1 response. Okay, it starts off bright and dims out with offset. Okay, and of course, like I said, these are largely depth dependent, right? And it gets to a point where you don't see any AVO response, and that's what we call our AVO floor. So typically we use all these techniques and AVO behaviors to understand fluid field. Okay, and most times we associate class 3, class 2, or class 2P responses to hydrocarbon presence, particularly for high porosity rocks, right? And the question is that always the case? When I see a class 3 AVO response, should that always be indicative of hydrocarbon-bearing sands? And of course, that leads me to the topic of today. False positive AVO response. False positive, I took that directly from Google, is a test result which wrongly indicates that a particular condition or attribute is present. It wrongly indicates. Of course, we know that the terminology false positive not only used in the oil and gas industry, also used in the medical industry as well. So how do we now discriminate false positive from conventional oil sands that will show the expected geophysical signatures? And that is the foundation of the focus of my presentation today. And we're going to go deep into, dive more into the study area. And like I said earlier on, this work has been presented in the past and published. You can also find the paper using that SPE number. So into the heart of the study, the top left-hand corner of the view map there shows the study location, offshore Niger Delta. The study area is located under a water depth of about 1,000 meters. Okay. One of the key things, the key value driver of this project is that it sits within the heart of a proven accumulation, a proven field. And we thought it at the time that this opportunity will be a quick win for us, a quick tie back to an existing FPSO where we drill a one producer, one injector. And one of the key things that gave us that impetus to really believe that we're dealing with a viable opportunity. Look at the amplitude map at the bottom there. You can see that that's the opportunity, is a channelized fan system draped on an anticlinal structure. You see the very strong amplitude anomaly associated with that opportunity. But most importantly, not of this opportunity, we have proven accumulations that have been drilled, logged, and we are producing from those opportunities, drilled by well K, well O, and well L. And the interesting thing is that those opportunities that have been proven, the seismic signatures there on the amplitude anomaly there is not as robust as what we see here. So again, that tells us that this could be a potential hydrocarbon-bearing sand at the time. If you compare the AVO response at that location, you also see a class 3 AVO response, consistent with what we see in the proven accumulations there. Okay. Another information which we had was we had a well P, that was drilled off structure towards the flank of this opportunity, and that well encountered brine filled sands. Okay, and you can see the AVO response really flat. In fact, it's just a flat response there. But also you see that around the vicinity of that well, the amplitude appears to be dimmer compared to up deep of that opportunity. So again, we believe that this was a good calibration point. We, in fact, defined a potential contact to be somewhere around here based on the transition of that high amplitude to a lower amplitude. Of course, well X was drilled to that opportunity. But by and large, again, we are sitting within an area where we have proven accumulation. Okay, the DHI anomaly was good. In fact, we had a pulse of 70% associated with it. We are looking at fan system, channelized fan system. We also, based on our understanding of the petroleum system, we believe that we should have charge there. That was our understanding at the time. Because we're in a deep water setting with channels encased in shale, so the key trapping system is will be mostly pinch outs. So your channels or your fans are pinching out into the bounding shales. Okay, we carried an uncertainty in terms of reservoir thickness. Of course, in a deep water setting, things are really erratic. So we still believe that there was a bit of uncertainty in that space. And of course, fluid field, fluid type. With that kind of bright amplitude, could it also be gas? That was also an area of concern. But we believe that to a great extent, that should be hydrocarbon. So, of course, the well was drilled, okay? And that's the well log there, gamma ray and resistivity. And you can see the outcome of that well. It turned out to be a brine sand, very thick sand, 78 feet, 100% net to gross, very obvious. Porosity is above 30%. Of course, permeability in the Darcy range as well. But it's wet. And from the resistivity log, which is the next track, you don't see any indication that that it's hydrocarbon bearing or was hydrocarbon bearing at some point. In terms of residual hydrocarbon, it's all flat. It will also interest you to know that we also carried out fluid inclusion studies using some the cuttings that we retrieved. And the fluid inclusion study did not show any indication that at any particular point in time was that reservoir charged. So it has always been wet. So there is a geological element to why that structure failed, which is not going to be discussed here. But I will really center on the geophysics element, like I earlier on said. So what went wrong? Well, our understanding of the geology and, of course, the geophysics, the geophysical attribute which we used to underpin the presence of hydrocarbon at the time, we believe was a bit skewed. I mean, the fact that we were sitting within an area that was already proven gave us that confidence that we should expect that the sand will have been 100% charged, but that was not the case. So that was a bias there in terms of our understanding. The other aspect of it is our understanding of the geophysical attributes that we placed on the table, the bright spots that we saw, the AVU anomalies. Should we always take it as solid proof evidence that we have hydrocarbon? So we stopped more in the qualitative aspect of our interpretation rather than the quantitative at the time before, that's pre-drill. So moving forward, based on what we saw at the time, we decided, of course, within that time, we're also acquiring seismic, broadband seismic data, which was fully acquired after the well was drilled. So it became a very important data for us to deploy in our post-mortem analysis. We revisited our hydrocarbon charge model. And of course, we carried out more of quantitative DHI assessment to understand why we got it wrong and what we can do differently moving forward. And we also built an AVU inversion model, which will be the center of this presentation moving forward. So we step into the postmortem analysis. Like I said in my opening slides, rock physics analysis is typically the foundation, the bedrock of any seismic interpretation, leading to quantitative analysis, really, of your seismic data. I can't overemphasize that. And really, for this presentation, really, this is one of the most important slides. You don't miss me here. It's the most important slide. So please just pay attention to this slide. So the rock physics analysis is largely based on well data, of course. But with the well data, your density, your velocity logs, you convolve those logs to, you integrate those logs to get elastic properties. It could be VPVS, it could be shear impedance, P impedance, Poisson ratio. There are all sorts of different attributes. But having tried all the attributes, we finally landed on two attributes that we believe were really descriptive of our geology and of our subject reservoir of interests. And that's why we laid more emphasis on these two attributes, mu rho and lambda rho. So mu rho is an attribute that helps us, that reflects rigidity of a sand, okay? And it somewhat is a proxy for lithology. So you can use mu rho as a tool to understand if you're dealing with sands and shale, particularly in a clastic environment. I've not tried this in carbonates, but in clastic environments, yes, it can give you that indication of sand shale present, right? But understand that of this how you assign what value of mu rho is sand or what value of mu rho is shale is also depth dependent. Again, it's a measure of rigidity, right? So yeah, so mu rho is a proxy for lithology. The other attribute is lambda rho. Lambda rho is a measure of rock compressibility. So, and compressibility of a rock is also a function of the fluid encased in that rock on the pore field. So, and compressibility increases as you go from brine sands to oil sands, of course, to gas sands. So, gas is more compressible than oil. Oil is more compressible than water, than brine. So, the lower the mu rho value, the higher the lower the lambda rho value, the higher the compressibility. So here I have plotted oil sands, 2 different oil sands and brine sands. Okay, and you can see the brine sands have a higher compressibility compared to the oil sands. And if I had gas, it means that my gas will plot somewhere around here because it's more compressible than oil. Okay, so but when you look at these plots, 2 things jump out. One, I can make a clear fluid discrimination with my lambda rho. So my lambda rho is a good fluid descriptive tool. So I can separate non-hydrocarbon from hydrocarbon. My mu rho, you can see all my sands, both the brine sands and the hydrocarbon bearing sand having similar mu rho value or near similar mu rho value. All right. And my shales, you can see where it plots on this quadrant, right? Higher mu rho value. So that is what it looks like. And of course, again, like I said earlier on, this whole description will flip at some point, especially when at some particular depth reference, right? So everything here is also is a function of depth, right? So, but at this depth, shallower than 8,000 feet, this is what 8,000 feet. This is what we should see in terms of depth below mud line, somewhere around 8,800 feet below mud line. We should see shallower than 8,800 feet below mud line. You should see this kind of separation playing out. Okay, so this your conventional sands and of course your shale. Now, one thing we did was, well X was not the first well that we had encountered false positive. In the past, we had encountered false positive in a couple of wells. And you can see what I've just plotted now, a new data showing up, okay, plotting largely around these quadrants. And this was one of the false positive we encountered in the past before we drilled the last well, well X. And you see that it plots, of course, near similar lambda rho value, but the mu rho appears to be higher than expected. Now, one thing that is also strange about this plot is that these sands have similar porosity as these sands. Remember, mu rho is a measure of rigidity. So what is responsible for this rigid nature of this false positive? Now, we also went ahead to plot the well X data, our 78 feet thick, clean, high net to gross. And that is it there. It also sits within the same quadrant as other false positives. So there's something unique about the false positives. Why do they have this strange mu rho behavior? It's $1 million question which we've not been able to address. And I'll tell you why we've not been able to address that. But be that as it may, we see a clear distinction between conventional hydrocarbon-bearing sands and false positives within this study area. So the question is, should I always expect that my false positive will always sit in these quadrants at any particular point in time, or within any particular, as long as we're within the same study area? The answer is no, because we also looked at the impact of depth as well. And one thing we see is that for hydrocarbon-bearing sands that are located deeper than 9,000 feet, okay, they tend to show off with high mu rho because they are rigid. That is what we should expect. They are rigid and they plot close to the shale, right? In fact, more rigid than the false positive sands. So it means that deeper than 9,000 feet, if I had false positive or if I had hydrocarbon bearing sand, I might not be able to discriminate these two guys. So, but what we are looking at here is anything shallower than 9,000 feet subsea or 8,800 feet below mudline, putting it that way. So, having seen that cross plots and the behavior of the false positives, one other thing we actually asked ourselves: could there be something wrong with the log, the quality of the log, in terms of the borehole condition, which largely will affect our density too, since it's a padded instrument, right? That will, of course, influence whatever elastic property you calculate from that density log, or even sonic as well, cycle skipping and all that. So we did, of course, an assessment of the quality of the logs, of course, using the well X as an example. Okay, so that's the gamma ray. On that track, you also see the caliper log in green and the bit size log in red. Okay, the next track is the resistivity log, of course. We have the density, and we have this density correction log, which also will give us an insight into the quality of our density log. But if we step back and look at the caliper and the bit size, you observe that both the bit size and the caliper kind of track each other. That is the red log there and the green. And it tells us that the hole is engaged, right? So there is no washout or slurry formation that will cave into the hole. So which is really good. Okay, so we have every reason to trust the log. And of course, density correction log. Typically, if using this density correction log, you have a baseline of 0, and you don't expect, for a good quality log, you don't expect to go above 0.05 grams per cc, right? So whatever, I mean, if you're doing a good quality log, it should revolve around that 0 baseline. And you can see that the density correction log stays within that framework of 0. So again, just gives us that on the comfort feel that my logs are of good quality. So the high neuro value that we see has nothing to do with the quality of our data, the quality of the log. Okay, the logs are in check. We also looked at other cross plots. So this is a cross plot of acoustic impedance versus shale volume, and you'll notice that all the false positives and the conventional hydrocarbon bearing sands have similar acoustic impedance, near similar acoustic impedance, but the most important thing is that they are acoustically softer in terms of acoustic impedance, acoustically softer than the bounding shale, which is still strange because when you now move to the next slide, which is the mu, which is a measure of rigidity, and here we are plotting mu against porosity, you observe that all that false positives have a higher mu value compared to conventional sands, which is a bit counterintuitive to this other plot because this tells me that my sands are soft, but the mu tells me that the sands are rigid. But the interesting thing again is that if you look at the porosity distribution from here, we're looking at somewhere probably 0.27 or so to 0.35 or even 37. You see that both the false positive sands, including the well X or body X sands, have similar porosity value, okay, with the conventional sand. So what is responsible for that rigidity? $1 million question. So why haven't we been able to answer that question? And I'll tell you, typically you will not core a brine sand, right? It was a failure, so there was no need to core. But if we had core, maybe it would have given us some insight in terms of mineralogical constituents of that false positive. Could there be some sort of heavy mineral like zircon, rutile, monazite that might be playing an influence there? But the question is, why should that kind of mineral be restricted to only the false positives? That's another $1 million question, but we'll leave it at that. But we are happy that yes, we have a descriptive tool that can help us understand false positives from conventional sands. So having done that, we went into building an AVO inversion model. because of course we have different flavors of inversion, chip inversion or colored inversion. Of course, we will have the post-stack inversion. And what we are looking at here is the pre-stack or simultaneous inversion, where you integrate your substacks, which I have listed there, 0 to 10 near, 10 to 20 mid, and 20 to 30 degrees far offsets. And you integrate that whole stacks, 3 stacks, and simultaneously convolve 3 elastic property. So in this case, P impedance, S impedance, and density. Of course, we don't use density because of it could be a bit unstable. The results for density are really unstable. So it's still an area of research, really. But with P and S impedance, we are good to go. So with P and S impedance, we can mathematically calculate lambda rho and mu rho, okay? Of course, we are focusing our attention on the mu rho, which is more descriptive for us for false positives. So remember these cross plots, again, all my false positives have a higher mu rho value, and the conventional sands, both brine sands and oil-bearing sands, have low mu rho value. Very important. Okay, so this is the result of the inversion model. We start with a conventional oil sand, so typical oil sands. And this is oil sand A, okay, body A. Very thick sand, almost 100 feet sand. And you can see saturation here is about more than 80%. Okay, it shows up with a very nice class 3 AVO response. Okay, consistent with what you should expect in this kind of sand. Porosities are almost 35% here. The amplitude shows very strong amplitude anomaly. Okay, and of course that sand is what it's plotted here in green. The data points in there, that shaded green there, the data points in green. Okay, that's the sand that's plotted there from the logs, of course. And the lambda rho model, this is the map view, you can see, so high compressibility will show up with very bright colors, low compressibility will show up with very dark, dim colors. So that particular sands have high compressibility showing up with that bright colors. Okay, and if you look at your mu rho, again, high rigidity should show up with very dark, cold colors. Low rigidity should show up with very bright colors. And that's what we are seeing here. So that sand shows up with very bright colors. Okay, so one thing that we did was we took the absolute value of this proven accumulation, absolute value of the mu rho, absolute value of the lambda rho, and we plotted it here, and that's where it sits, that bulb there. It just tells you that the model kind of also agrees with the actual data. So it's some sort of calibration for us. Okay, so these are conventional oil sand. So now let's move on to false positives. I've got 3 false positives which I'm going to share. So the first is our famous body X sand. Again, you can see a very thick sand, brine field from the resistivity, class 3 AVO response. Okay, the amplitude shows us that we've got high amplitude anomaly there, similar to a high amplitude anomaly we see in proven accumulations, not of that, as I shared earlier on. Okay, and the lambda rho value tells me that, oh, well, I've got high, low lambda rho, which indicates high compressibility, hydrocarbon bearing, right? And it's consistent with the data there. Low lambda rho, similar to conventional bearing sands. But if you come to the mu rho, okay, things flip. You can now see that it becomes rigid. You can see the high values that have been modeled for this. You can see how it looks. And of course, if you take the absolute value from this model for mu rho and the absolute value of the lambda rho and you plot it here, that's where it sits. It sits in the same quadrant, although slightly higher, but again, it's similar to the actual data itself. So that is what we should expect to see for false positives. If I flip back, comparing it with conventional hydrocarbon bearing sands, very low lambda rho value flagging off in this color. And coming back there, you see our X, of course, body X sand showing up with very high mu rho value. Okay, so that's this is another false positive. So like I said, we had drilled a couple of false positives in the past. Yeah, and we see again, of course, brine sands, very good sand quality, of course, at the bottom, but it shows out towards the top. But overall, very good sands. Porosity again in the same range, 30% and above. Class 3 AVO response. Okay, amplitude looks really very bright. The lambda rho also, of course, very bright as well. Of course, and then you come to the mu rho, things changes again, and you see a high mu rho value consistent with our data at that point. And of course, the model is plotted there, which sits in the same quadrant as the yellow data scattered across that quadrant there. So again, another proof that the model is doing what it says it's doing, what it should do. It's helping us discriminate false positive from true hydrocarbon. And the last example, this is an interesting one because we have 3 sands here, okay? So I have my gamma ray, resistivity, and my porosity log, okay? The false positive is this sand, brine field sand. It's sandwiched in between 2 hydrocarbon-bearing sands, okay? And that's the hydrocarbon-bearing sand, and that's a thin, shaly hydrocarbon-bearing sand. And that is the AVO expression for all the 3 sands. You will agree with me that the AVO behavior for your false positive sand with similar porosity as your hydrocarbon-bearing sand is near similar, both almost similar. In fact, you could also argue that this has a higher AVO, class 3 AVO behavior, stronger class 3 AVO behavior compared to this guy. But it just tells you that if you stick to AVO, you will not be able to discriminate these 2 sands. If you come to the sand below, porosity is 26, that's what you should expect. You start getting into the class 1 area, right? The class 1 regime. So you see amplitude reducing with offsets, a very low porosity, and of course it's deeper, slightly deeper than these 2 sands, okay? But yeah, so you stay with that, you will not be able to discriminate those 2 sands, right? And the amplitude signature shows that, yes, you're looking at very high amplitudes there. The lambda rho value also shows low lambda rho value indicative of high compressibility. And of course, if you come to the mu rho, everything changes again in the mu rho value. So you start seeing very high mu rho indicative of false positives. Okay, so that wraps up all the examples and how we've been able to use this technique from rock physics and of course inversion, but most importantly on the backdrop of sound geological knowledge, really, because you can't remove our understanding of our local geology to your interpretation, right? So in summary, what have we learned? First, the opportunity, the well X opportunity was drilled on a streamer volume. Okay, so in the course of doing this work, we had acquired a broadband seismic, and that fed into our postmortem analysis. And I can tell you for free that when we did our initial assessment using the streamer volume, we didn't get that descriptive nature that we expect, that we can see from the broadband, from the streamer volume. So the broadband has higher frequency. Remember, and it gives you that opportunity to resolve bed boundaries even much better. So the broadband seismic was used, better imaging, better understanding of the subsurface. Yes, DHIs, we typically flaunt around lots of DHI techniques that can give us an indication of pore fill. But most importantly, really, we should understand the boundary conditions of using those DHIs, the pitfalls, right? So tread with caution when you use DHI. Bright spots, look out for conformance to structure. Flat spots, could there be other factors that contribute, that can give you flat spots, such as mineralogical changes, even depositional changes too can give you flat spots. So bear that in mind. AVO, yes, AVO is classed as a potential DHI, but it's not a silver bullet. As you can see, that AVO for those three sands are almost similar, particularly for the two sands, right? So it's not a silver bullet. Integrate with other DHIs, fit to structure, flat spots, and all that. Okay, so what is our recommendation moving forward? Now, like I said earlier on, and I'll always say this, rock physics forms the foundation of any quantitative interpretation, seismic quantitative interpretation that you need to do. But bear in mind that your rock physics description is largely influenced by your local geology, is influenced by your reservoir qualities, influenced by mineralogy, bed thickness, even most importantly, the properties of your bounding shales. Very, very important. For this particular study, which was centered within a particular study area, this is the attributes that we have seen that has worked for us. Now, we have not tested it elsewhere. So we have not tested the application of mu rho or lambda rho value elsewhere. So it would be nice to see how that will work outside of that study area, right? Because again, it's a unique behavior we are seeing in terms of the mu rho. It might not work in your own field. And I think that's the message here. It might not work. It's a strong might. Because again, your local geology can really tilt things in different directions. So pay attention to your local geology. If you've got core, very good. Look at the minerals and see how you can tie it with your elastic properties, right? That is really important. But for us, this is a game changer, right? Within that study space. Okay, and from that rock physics analysis, we went on to build simultaneous inversion, inverting for both mu rho and of course lambda rho. Again, it's always good to tie this with other interpretation techniques, right? Not just inversion. Okay, you can also look at your up deep down deep amplitude ratio. Try a lot of quantitative amplitude analysis that can help you discriminate your false positives. But this is one thing that has worked in our space, and I'm always happy to hear what others are also doing. But I would like to leave us with this last comment. Not all that glitters is gold. So the fact you see one strong amplitude anomaly does not really mean that you're going to strike, you're going to encounter gold or encounter the black gold as it is. So I'd like to leave it at that. And thanks for giving me the opportunity. Happy to take questions, comments. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chudi. Please, can we just clap for this young man for doing justice again and again to this topic? And I really appreciate you, Obinna, because every time you speak about this project, which I was part of, you really bring back again a lot of illumination to it. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions today. I already see some in the chat. But let me just quickly summarize what we've gone through in the last 30 minutes. First, in your last sentence, all that glitters are not gold. I think that's just summarize it all. In our business of looking for oil, we've been using DHI for decades. But in the last few years, we've realized not all that glitters are gold. And that's exactly what you've shown. But you have shown it in a very systematic and comprehensive manner. Like a scholar that you are, you've actually started teaching the basics. And I really enjoyed that. So you started with the basics of the principles of DHI. And I really enjoyed it. I like the way you started. So that it's clear to us what we generally would call DHIs and how we've been using them. appreciated that. And you have shown the phytostructure, the flat spot, and the AVD as a tool that we've been using. But again, you went further to show us how it could fail. And then you went further to show us what other things could be done, particularly focusing on rock physics, a very good learning point. And I like the way you've actually broken it into various stages or various things we could do with rock physics. You landed on the Mo row and the lambda row too, which has proven very, very viable in this area that we have tested it. You have really explained how we used it, and you have tested it in 3-4 cases where we've had false positive in the past. So far, so good. In this area that you have tested it, is been consistent. So as far as science is concerned, I think you've demonstrated the consistency and the science behind what you have shown us today. So far, so good, is working. And just as you said, we still wait on to see what others are doing in other parts of the Delta or other parts of the world. And we are hoping that they will also come forward to NAPE to show us the other things they might have done to complement what you have shown us here today in separating the wheat from the chaff, separating the real DHI from the false positive, as you have said it. I think you've just summarized it to us on how we can use rock physics to better understand the subsurface in terms of looking for hydrocarbon, particularly when we're using the quantitative interpretation methodology. I hope I got that summary right. So then we can then go to our questions. Let me look up the population now. Please, if you have question, just raise your hand. I already see Mr. Duru Callistos. Mr. Callistos, you have the floor. I can't hear you.
My chairman, that was a mistake. Please.
Good.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
All right, Callistus, can you speak?
Sorry, I said.
Okay, he raised his hand in error.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Please, if you have question, raise your hand. There is already a question in the chat, in the Q&A column. So please, if you want to type, don't use the chat. Please use the Q&A tool. It's there at the bottom of the screen. So there's already a question from Shegun Akimuda, and Obinna is asking, looking at the rock physics model that you shared, it seems it will only be applicable to unconsolidated sandstone. How do we address the cases of compacted sand? In this case, Dr. Obinna.
Yes, thank you. I think that's a very, very good question, really. So yes, what we have seen.
Sorry to cut in you, Dr. Obinna. I'm sorry
Yes.
to cut in. Do you mind turning on your video? They really want to see your face as well.
Oh, they want to see my face. Okay, let me see if this will work. Allow. Can you see me?
We see a NEPA screen, if you permit me to say so. It's still black.
Is it still black?
Yes, but please go ahead with the response while you sort that out so we can gain some time. It's all right.
Okay, all right, thank you. So, yes, what we have tried, done and tested so far is, and what we can see from the cross plot, like you pointed out, is it works for sands located above 9,000 feet subsea. Now, for deeper sands, it means that we need to come up with some other attributes that can help us understand, differentiate those conventional hydrocarbon bearing sands from false positives. I don't have a blueprint answer to that for now. It's an area that will require further investigation. And let's also understand that, there is a window where the use of amplitude or any amplitude related attribute will fail, and that's below your amplitude floor or your AVO floor. So, and at that point, we now rely more on the geology, right, to help us understand those kind of opportunities if they exist below amplitude or AVO floor. So, but for now, really, it's a good question, an area of research, an area of investigation, which hopefully, if we can really devote some effort there in the future. But yeah, let's watch that space. That's what I'm going to say.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other question?
There was a follow-up question by Chisom to the one by Olusegun. I think it's just a simple question to say, what is rock physics and how does it relate to geology and geophysics?
Good. Very, very good question. So rock physics is the bridge that connects geophysics and geology. Now, the reason it does that, because one, you're working from logs. Remember, your logs are your hard data, so it represents your geology, right? But from your logs, you can calculate elastic properties that are linked to your seismic data. They are linked to your geophysics attributes, right? So you can calculate P impedance, for instance, which is an elastic property. You can also do a relationship or put together a relationship, cross-plot a relationship between that P impedance and a geological attribute like porosity. So you now see the linkage between P impedance and porosity, right? So P impedance, remember, is an elastic seismic attribute, and porosity is your geological attribute. So with that fusion, you can relate whatever elastic property you have generated with a geological property, either porosity, net to gross. Some people have tried permeability as well. So rock physics is that bridge that links geology and geophysics, largely using log data.
Yeah, indeed. You see the physics of our rocks, really. And thanks, Obinna. I also see Kenneth Anyanwu's hand up. Kenneth, you have the floor.
All right, admin, please promote Kenneth so that he can speak. He raised his hand. Can you kindly promote him to panelist level so he can ask his question?
It's okay.
Okay, let me allow him to talk. Okay, yes, Kenneth, it's fine now. You can unmute and then ask your question. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Clearly.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
go ahead.
So thank you very much, Dr. Obinna, for a wonderful presentation. And mine is more of yes, a question stroke a comment actually, because the presentation was very robust in the sense that you practically tried all that you could have tried before that well was drilled. But my question is, without drilling that well, is there any means that you could have unraveled this very observation from the Munro angle, even without drilling that well? Because, yes, I mean, everything was done and everything was positive until that well was drilled. And it now turned out to be a failure, so to say. So the question is, what is that thing you could have done before drilling that well that could have given you this insight that the result of this well brought to the table?
Yes. No, thanks. Very, very good question, really. So first and foremost, remember that we acquired a broadband seismic after we drilled the well, right? Which was more descriptive than the streamer volume. But let's assume that I had this broadband seismic before we drilled that well. And what will I have done? I will do exactly what I have just done today, what I've done post-mortem, because everything that I have shared today, we've used information largely. We've used information that we had before the well was drilled. So again, I'm assuming that we had a broadband seismic before the well was drilled. So I would have still done my rock physics analysis using other false positives that we have drilled in the past without the well X data, right? And based on that, I will have done my inversion model and looked at that particular opportunity. And if it flagged off with that high neuro value, okay, then I know that, yeah, we are dealing with a potential false positive. Now, in addition to that, so this is more sophisticated. What are the other simple things that I will have done? I will have done something like a quantitative analysis of my amplitude. So I will compare the up deep amplitude signature and the down deep potential water leg signature and do a ratio of that and compare that ratio with a proven accumulation where I have logged hydrocarbon and I have a water leg. And I'll check if the ratio are similar. Because what we actually found out later was that if you do an up deep down deep ratio of your amplitude, the false positive amplitude have a very low ratio compared to the amplitude ratio of proven accumulations that were located in the north or elsewhere. Again, that's for the fact that you're comparing potential amplitudes of similar reservoir quality, right? But those are some of the things that is one thing I will have done or I will do pre-drill, right? And I'll still build this model pre-drill. I don't know if that answers your question.
Kenneth, does that answer your question?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yes.
And just to also support what Obinna mentioned. So as explorers now, one other thing we could have also done, and he did mention that during his presentation, is that using a robust use of that tool called forward modeling. Now, when you forward model, there is a tendency for you to be anchor biased on something, right? Whereas a forward model is a tool that you should use with all your head open. In other words, you forward model with all realities, all possible realization. I think that didn't go very well because there was a little bit of anchor bias on that well. So if we had done a forward model with a possibility of 100% net to gross reservoir, which was not part of our realization, but it should have been. Would we have drilled the well? Maybe yes, but would we have drilled it with a pulse of 70? Definitely no, right? So yes, there are things we could have done better, which we are also learning, as Dr. Obinna mentioned. Then again, with the fact that we don't have beautiful seismics after, and with the help of Obinna and his team and some of our young guys also, we are able to then put other things on the table that we could use for future prospects. And very good question you asked, Kenneth. Okay, I think at this point, Mamadou, let me go back to you so that we can move forward.
Yes, we have just we'll just take maybe 2-3 questions quickly. Maybe we'll also try to give brief answers because they posted these questions. Would you mind responding to this question? There's one here from Muhyiddin Hamza. He says, although you mentioned that core samples have not been collected with the brine reservoirs, however, do you think that well cuttings from such reservoir areas could give us an insight into the mineralogy like you suggest? At least some hints, if otherwise, why? Kingsley?
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Thanks for that question. I think I think you struck that really well. So cuttings could have been used, but for this kind of study, because of the limitation of cuttings, for the fact that your cuttings might not represent the actual depth from where that cutting was retrieved from. So it might introduce a bit of bias to the overall understanding of that particular sand, right? But yes, it's an area that one can also investigate. But honestly, for this kind of study, you want to strike the nail on the head, really, and you want to get it right the first time. You don't want ambiguities because, hey, you're drilling a multi-million-dollar well, right? You need to be, to a great extent, precise with that analysis. So I'll rather say, I mean, if possible, core, but where you don't have core, you use cuttings, but understand the limitations and understand your uncertainty range while you use that while you use cuttings, right?
All right. There's another one from maybe this is just a software question. Oluwabukumi Morakiyo says, is there a dedicated software assigned for this differentiation? Can it also work where log data hasn't been acquired?
Okay, thanks. So rock physics is all about logs, right? You use logs to understand your elastic properties. Now, let's assume you were dealing with a frontier setting, no wells of any sort. You can try using analogs of a different, probably another depositional or probably another setting, but similar depositional environment, similar geologic setting. If you can get wells from there and try and extrapolate. Now, if you don't have wells at all, like what Mr. Shegood said, you can do a forward model. You can do forward models with your seismic data. You can do some sort of 2D models. You can build 2D models and compare with your seismic data, and see how far you can go with that. But where you don't have well logs, really, you need to rely on your sound geology, your local understanding of the geology to drill your well. I think that's where I want to leave it.
All right. To the last question from David Anonese says, was there a fault partially leaking around the location of the opportunity where we have false positives?
Good. Okay. So we are getting to the geology aspect of this work, which was not presented. So I'll refer you to that paper, one of those papers that I earlier shared. But just to give you an insight, there was no fault around the vicinity of this opportunity. So it was not like the opportunity was charged at some point and it leaked. It was never charged. We looked at fluid inclusions. We also looked at petrophysical analysis that gave us that insight that that reservoir was never charged at any particular point in time. Okay. One thing we've observed around within the study area that you need deep-seated faults that plunges into the source rock to channel, to serve as some sort of migration path for hydrocarbon to be charged to any reservoir within that area. And there was no such fault around the vicinity of this opportunity that would have charged hydrocarbon or that would have in some way been reactivated, and your hydrocarbon will have leaked out from that reactivated fault. So that does not exist.
All right. So thank you very much, Dr. Obinna. I will hand back first to my chairman before we continue. For others who had more questions, for the reasons of time, I know Dr. Obinna is keen on this subject, like he spoke passionately. He will be able to respond to other questions, and likewise the paper which he has referred to will be a good insight. So I pass over to our chairman for the day, just to give us his final thoughts on this session before we move to the other part. Mr. Chairman, sir. Oh, you're muted, sir.
Hey, sorry. I said thank you, my brother, and thank you again to everyone for really listening and participating very actively. But more importantly, to Dr. Obinna, thank you for bringing again to the fore your knowledge and your skill and your understanding of how we tackle that problem. But more importantly, the readiness to share that knowledge amongst everybody in this industry, because I believe that this 1 hour you have shared will go a long way to help other companies in preventing spending, as you said, millions of dollars on a well, if they can just listen and also learn a little from what we have learned. And I thank you for bringing that up front. So I say thanks, and I hope that if people come to you or will call on you again to share more details of your knowledge or skill in this area, you will readily make yourself available to the association. So again, thank you very much, and thanks everyone for listening to us. Back to you then.
Thank you very much, sir. Please can we all, with our e-claps and e-appreciation, thank our chairperson for today. You can just give your claps, your thumbs up, appreciate our chairman for today's session. Now we will go straight away into the second part, which is a presentation. We would like to invite, she will give us her remarks, and then she will present the e-plaque, which we do in the Port Harcourt chapter, to the presenter. Please welcome our President-elect, Fellow of NAPI, Mrs. Olajumoke Ajayi, as she speaks to us and then presents the plaque to the speaker. Over to you, madam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. And I want to first of all thank the chapter for this excellent session, and to thank our chairman, Mr. Olusegun Obilaja, for making yourself available and anchoring the program effectively. Thank you very much. And to Dr. Obinna, thank you for the presentation. It was clear, well delivered, and effectively communicated in a way that it was easy for everyone to understand. You know, with the number of questions and the type of questions that were asked, it shows how engaging the presentation was. Rock physics, AVO, you know, the integration, like you said, is one that will help enhance exploration successes. It will help to better, you know, identify potential hydrocarbon bearings reservoirs and improve reservoir characterization. And this, you know, at the end of the day, will help to reduce uncertainties and risk. So thank you very much. And I believe that whenever we call upon you, even beyond the chapter level, you make yourself available. Thank you very much, and we appreciate you, you know, now and always. Thank you. So for the presentation of the plaque, I will first, I'll present your, please, can you make it clear for me to see? Okay. Maybe you should enlarge, please. Let me just try to enlarge. Okay, yeah. So, on behalf of the Nigerian Association of Petroleum Explorationists, Port Harcourt chapter, we present to you Dr. Obinna Chudi in appreciation of your presentation, participation as a guest speaker in the NAPI Port Harcourt chapter technical meeting for the month of April. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. Please, can we all give him a round of applause by showing on the emoji? Please, let's clap virtually for him. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, madam. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you so much, President-elect, for your kind words and the presentation of the plaque. So we are wrapping up shortly. So everybody stay with us. You've been with us from the beginning. At the time in the session, we had over 102 persons in the call, which is quite impressive. And you will testify that the meeting has been excellent. The presentation has been excellent. So stay with us to the very end. In a few minutes, we will close the meeting together. So I go back now to our publicity secretary for some announcements. So Mr. Obobi, the floor is yours to give us some information regarding NAPI, the chapter, as well as the national body. Over to you.
Yes, Mr. Momodu, confirm you can hear me, please.
Loud and clear.
Okay, fantastic. I will just try to share my screen very quickly. So I would take us through a couple of the slide that I have here. Confirm you can see it. I'm sharing.
Yes, we can see your slides.
Okay, thank you very much. So I once again, I bring us fraternal greetings from the office of the NAPI Publicity Secretary in the person of Mrs. Sumime Oguntola. So I will be sharing a couple of announcements from her office. So just to bring back to our memory that the early bird registration is currently ongoing for the 2025 NAPE conference. It will be ongoing till 1st of September of this year. And the theme of the conference, as a reminder, is revitalizing the Nigerian petroleum exploration and production strategies for energy security and sustainability and development. So just a reminder that with the early bird registration, it comes with some reasonable savings, and we can get more details from the flyers that have been sent via the various channels. I would also like to remind us that we've all been invited, of course, to submit our abstracts ahead of the conference. I would like to highlight some of the key dates that are worth mentioning. So 31st of July, that's when the abstract submission ends. And from 31st of August, acceptance letters will be issued to those whose papers have been accepted. Key conference dates remain 9th to 13th of November. That's the conference date. And of course, the venue will be at Echo Hotels and Suites in Lagos. For more info, enjoin to reach out to the EIC, whose contact details are also on the flyer there as well. Another upcoming event worth mentioning is, of course, the Basin Evaluation Competition, which we all know really is the ultimate student geoscience showdown. Of course, students and universities through the BEC have a chance to really go beyond the classroom to dive into real-world activities of petroleum exploration to analyze real subsurface data sets. So it's a good opportunity for universities, and we invite them to really register before the set deadline of 16th of May, 2025. And of course, more details are on here on the flyer. I also like to talk about the upcoming NAPE elections. That process has officially commenced, and the active members are enjoined to participate by ensuring a robust candidate nomination exercise is flawlessly executed. I think that's what's ongoing now. And of course, this would help the association to serve us better. Worth mentioning is that the campaigns and presentation of candidates will commence on August the 4th, while voting would officially start September 1st. So please watch out for more details from our various publicity channels. I'll go to the next one, which is really around the research grant in aid. So this one is really coming out of the UAP chairman's office for active members who are carrying out research relating to key subject areas of interest. You can see those areas of interest on the flyer. But interested candidates are advised to apply for this by 31st of May. That's the deadline. And of course, for more details on the guidelines for application, you can please go through the flyer for more details. I'll talk about the NAPE dues, but first I'd like to give special thanks to those of our members who have already met their financial obligations. So thank you very much. For those who are yet to pay, kindly do so via the account number on the screen to prevent being suspended, so we can continue to enjoy the full benefits of NAPE. Lastly, I would like to talk about the forthcoming 50th anniversary of NAPE. This has officially been unveiled by the president, and is really to celebrate the impactful and far-reaching achievements of NAPE over the last 5 decades. This event will be held in Lagos on the 14th of August this year, and it boasts a high-level panel session that will x-ray the past 50 years and of course NAPE's defining role in the energy ecosystem. So of course there will be Golden Jubilee Gala Night, which combines legacy recognition with Pioneer Awards and the NAPE Future Direction presentation. So we are all enjoying to please stay tuned for more on this event. With that, I'd like to thank you all for listening, and back to you, Mr. Mamadou.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bobby, for that. And once again, we'd like to really appreciate everyone. The leadership of NAPE National, they are still here on the call, the president, the vice president, the president-elect, other executives, our own amiable Dr. Kunle is here as well. Thank you all for being here, staying with us to the very end. Your support is so valuable to each and every one of us. So we're going to close the meeting shortly. We're going to call on one of our ESCOs. He is the GS, our General Secretary, Mr. Callistus Anaile, to close us with a prayer and then one or two final words, and we are off. So Callistus, over to you for a closing prayer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mahmoud. Confirm you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
All right, let's pray. Father Lord, we thank you for the beauty of a family coming together to discuss and learn together. We ask that you continue to endow us with your strength, your wisdom, so that we continue to apply such to the development of the nation and to the betterment of our profession, and in general, to the betterment of ourselves individually. These are many more with us. Through Jesus Christ we pray. Amen.
Amen. So thank you once again, everyone. On behalf of the chapter coordinator, I say thank you, bon appetit, and see you next time when we call you again to another wonderful presentation. Thank you very much and have a lovely afternoon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys, again.
Good one. Thank you, everyone.
Nice day.
Thank you all and do have a lovely day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, APC, HCC.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see everybody. Thank you. Bye.
VP.